Yo, what are you doing right now? We are going to get real about men's issues, who Jesus is, and who we are as men in Christ. We're going to hear Trey, Jeremy, Michael, and Brad break it down. These guys call themselves the Cussin Christians. All right, guys, what is going on? Many bad calls that went their way, but
the one
still.
that, right before the half that was called a catch.
Oh, yeah. That was a bad one.
And the ball was on the ground.
Yeah, it happens every year.
Testing.
I got to check my man card because I have to confess to something.
Uh-oh. Did you cry during the...
I didn't watch one of the games yesterday.
Ooh, what?
I just didn't. And
We don't watch.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know why.
That's different though. Trey grew up in Texas.
I know.
He played sports. You know,
Okay.
you don't just stop watching football, dude. Like,
Man, I don't know why.
it's different. It's different.
Disappointment.
I know. It is a disappointment.
Well, I mean, with
you by yourself
you
yesterday?
and I, what?
Was Donna with you or you by yourself?
Yeah, Donna was under the weather. She,
Again?
she hasn't shaken this thing in like 10 days. She was running a little low grade fever yesterday, and so we were binge watching some Vikings, which is like my favorite show of all time. And Brad, I'm sold that when your head was shaved on the side, you
Ragnar.
could have been in the show Vikings.
I'll go back to that at some point. This is my last shot. Like, I'll never grow my hair out again.
No.
At this age, this is it. So I'm going to let it go for a couple more months. We'll see what happens, and then if it doesn't work out, I'll shave it back to the Ragnar look, and we'll go for that for a while. But we've been watching a series on Paramount Plus called SEAL Team. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's really good. No F-bombs, nothing objectionable. SEAL Team, and they actually have like several former SEALs that are part of the writing team.
That's cool.
It's a really good show.
Nice.
Very highly rated. Like 7 seasons of it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Never heard of that.
SEAL Team. So
Do you
Michele,
guys stream anything?
yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
You're busy writing books and promoting books. You're not watching any TV.
Oh my gosh! Right in this moment. Oh, I know. It's the NASA For All Mankind series.
For all mankind.
It's fiction,
So-
but it's about going to the moon and going to Mars.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. It's fiction. It's not documentary
No,
type stuff.
all fiction.
All fiction.
Nice.
Yeah.
Michele Rigby Assad is joining us, a great friend of our ministry, her and her husband Joseph, dear friends of ours, and her new book is now out. You can order it on Amazon. Get Off the X. I know Brad's going to zoom in on that here in a little while. This is the second book coming off of Breaking Cover, which is awesome. You have been extremely busy.
Yes.
But welcome. I'm so glad you're back. You were here before, and your husband's been on with us. And lessons learned in this book are really cool that we can apply to everyone, whether we were in the C.I.A. or not. But tell me about the roller coaster this past year's been. What the heck?
Well, I think this is all very interesting because I don't really consider myself a writer, and I don't find the process fun at all, which is pretty funny because I've got 2 books now. So it's like, people are like, really? So I think more than anything, it's been a calling to share. So it's been a calling to communicate. And so it's like this necessary evil to create these books, which is a really hard process. And it's gotten harder over time instead of easier to produce a good quality book. And then to market it. I mean, all the other stuff that goes into the book. I say the writing part's the easiest. It's everything else that goes along with it.
But it's as you speak around the country and give your experiences on life and your experience in your faith, having those books gives you a little extra cred,
Yeah,
street
man, if you've
cred.
got a book, you're legit.
You're legit,
and
right?
if you don't have a book, sorry.
Sorry, we don't want you to come speak at our event. But that's kind of true, though.
It's true. I mean, people very subconsciously people think, well, if you have enough to say to go into a book, then you're worth listening to.
Don't we all have enough to say to go into a book? I know you got stories of growing up in South Bend. You got Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa King. Yeah.
Tulsa King.
Was this a God-inspired thing for you, both of them, or just...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. 100%. I just knew that God was he said, you've learned so much and I need you to share this with other people. Because when you tell your story, they're going to see themselves in you and your struggles. And people learn by identifying with other people and how they've triumphed over difficulty or trials and tribulations, because we all know life is hard. And so you need encouragement to keep pushing forward.
Because everybody thinks, oh, wow, this glamour life of being in the C.I.A., that you got everything together. And I'm sure there are times where you're like, Lord, I don't want to do this. And you've expressed
all the
that.
time. Yeah. And, I think the other thing is being able to say, like, I have this amazing career, 10 years in the CIA, 12 years in private sector doing security consulting and professional speaking. Nothing of these careers has been easy. Everything has been the march up the mountain for me. Nothing ever landed in my lap. And so what I'm saying is I've learned that there's 1,000 obstacles, but I've learned methodologies to keep pushing forward when I didn't want to. Or when I thought it was just too hard.
You had to use those principles just to get this book published, right? But this one, you did a lot more hands-on, and so there was a lot more on your shoulders to make it happen.
Yes, 100%.
So I was reading the book, and I was like, oh, I remember when you were talking about this stage of trying to get the book published. I'm like, oh, she had to employ this tactic to get past that. So you were like living what you had written in order to even get the book out.
Yes, I do have a PhD in perseverance, so so I can write a book on it. Because
Yeah.
The book's called Get Off the X, C.I.A. Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your Life's Mission.
Is that code for get off your ass?
It could be.
In a nice way. I'm going to read it because I definitely want to read it. And I've read your previous book too, but I think the title's fantastic.
Reading the book, it seemed as though you had a little bit of a I'm not as good as everybody mindset, right?
Oh, yeah, small town.
Yeah, small town. And you talk about, we're all in this journey and we're all getting to the same point, but some of us go faster than others. And you made the comments about that 24-year-old getting out of school, trying to get the great job first, and you felt like you were lagging behind a little bit. Knowing you, I would have never thought that.
That's so funny. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
it's so hard.
Give us some context about growing up in Mount Dora and how you just felt a little inferior sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you are from a small town, you just know when you see the media, you're not the movers and the shakers of the world. Like what happens in small towns stays in small towns, whether that's true or not, that's your perception. And I remember when God asked me, I had the call to write the book. I said, oh my gosh, I don't know how to write a book. I have no idea. I'm not part of those literary New York circles. I'm not a literary genius. I didn't take English literature in college. And because there's this perception, and a lot of it's true. They have the connections. They're in the big cities, and their parents were successful, so they know what to do. They have the platforms. I didn't have any of that. And so everything that I've had to do, I've had to learn from scratch. Even politics and foreign affairs. My parents didn't discuss that stuff growing up. I didn't know anything.
I'm with you.
I was like a clean slate walking in to the CIA and getting married in Central Florida, going to DC and starting a new life there. You're surrounded by type A's everywhere. And it's super intimidating because, again, I didn't know anything. So I didn't know how am I going to compete in this environment where these people know, they know what they're doing, and I'm clueless. And so what I've shown people with my own life is what I'm demonstrating is you actually don't have to know, but if you have this sense of adventure, this desire to do something meaningful, and more importantly, a desire to learn, then you can build the foundation. And the fact that I got into the CIA and I served 10 years undercover as an intelligence officer is really demonstrative of that. Like, you can do it.
You said something about being a late bloomer in the book, and I think there's people that are in high school, if you're not on the honor roll, or if you don't make this list or that list, or if you're not who's who in college, a lot of people think, I'm not going to really do anything in life. I'm not going to make a mark. But in reality, a lot of famous people have made their marks in their 40s and 50s. And so, you're talking about being a late bloomer, and how many times you thought, like you were rejected, coming out of college, you were like the last one in your class to find a job and all these kind of things. But I mean, looking at you, like Trey said, looking at you now, you would have thought you had success every step of the way.
Yeah, quick and easy. Never.
So I guess the lesson is to take heart for those who are struggling and feeling like, well, I'm in my 30s to 40s. I haven't done anything of note. It's like it's still coming.
Yeah, and the whole point of this book is to say we often feel stuck. Like, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. You're never stuck if you can get your head past that assumption, because it's a mind thing.
That it totally is. And as I'm reading through this, I keep going back to Romans 12 and the transformation of our mind. And so many things I read here, I just said, talk about Romans 12, because the blood and the resurrection, who we become is set. And Mike Petzer said it well when he was here last week, the guy that wrote the Gospel of Identity. He says, you're filled with Jesus. Now he's just waiting for you to catch up.
That's good.
And I thought it was really good. And I kept thinking about this. I have this amazing gift of grace. I just haven't figured out what it all means yet. And we just everything you wrote in here, I kept going back to that verse. I don't know why, but
you know what I love about this, especially knowing you and Joseph, is that we as believers tend to say, "Oh, we need more of Jesus. We need more of Jesus. We need more of Jesus," and that's not really what we need. We need more Jesus out of us.
Well, I think we need more faith. Okay, so a lot of people are like, "Well, I trust Jesus. I don't trust myself," because that's how I was. Like, "Oh, I can believe in Him." But what does that mean for me every day? Well, what it meant for me was, if He opened the door for me to go into the C.I.A., then He clearly knows something more about my capabilities than I do.
Amen.
Right? So I might not understand right here and now, but I trust the Lord so much that if He opens the door or if an opportunity is presented to me, I will walk through it.
You also talk about the mind flip and practicing gratitude and how that changes you physically, starting with your mind. I thought that was amazing, and it kind of goes back to Romans 12, what you were saying, Trey.
If you look at the people who are successful, they're not the people who sit there and drown in their agony and problems. They're the people
or
who
the
go,
what ifs.
Yeah, they're not the people who are like the Eeyores of the world. They're the people that say, "This is tough. It's really difficult, but I'm going to keep looking at positive things, reading positive things, books and YouTubes that are positive, because that's going to make me feel better and give me hope for my future." Like, it's where you put your head.
I totally get it. Let's talk about the X. We all have an X.
Yes.
I have multiple X's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I love the analogy you used about the frog in the water. I've heard that before, and I am that's me.
What frog in water now?
If you put him in water out of the hydrant,
okay.
If put him in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you just put him in regular water and then slowly turn up the heat, he doesn't realize he's there. And that goes back to the little subtleties to Genesis, the fall, and then all of a sudden you realize you're trapped and you can't get out. And mentally, it's there. Give me some feedback on maybe a life experience or something from your end, from the book that describes that. So
many metaphors are in this book from my C.I.A. life and experience that I've taken to regular life. So one of them is like, when we got to Baghdad in 2006, it wasn't horrible right at the beginning, but after we were there for a period of time, then we were getting shelled like every day, every afternoon, car bombs every single morning. And so it kind of worked up to this fever pitch of like war. And there were people that flew into Baghdad and then overnight were suddenly dropped into this boiling cauldron of this war zone. And they're like, what is going on? How do you people live like this? Like, they're looking at those of us who've been there and like, this is insanity. And we're like, oh, yeah, I guess it is. Like, how do you mean guess? Like, it had just slowly become a really bad place to be. And then you realize, oh my God, isn't that life? Like that relationship was good for you at one point and it's turned totally toxic over time and you've normalized that bad relationship.
You see that? Yeah, so much.
You know, and you make excuses, or you're in a career and you don't realize that you hate getting up to go to work on Monday morning and you're demotivated and you're like, what? You don't realize that you're now sitting on the X. You are stuck in a career that's no longer serving your interests and your needs. And do you really want to stay there?
You use the term that people that get there, they seek the solace in their mediocrity.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned that, and sometimes I'll use that analogy of we just get stuck on this merry-go-round of mediocrity, and we just don't. We either don't want to get off because we feel safe on it, or we don't. We know we got a problem, but we're scared to death to try to jump off that merry-go-round.
Yeah.
And
Well, it requires less of you. Mediocrity requires less of you.
Yeah.
But I think in the long run, you have regret and you wonder, what could I have been?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the X, what you're talking about is the situation that you're in where you might be stuck. But you've got some really cool stories about when you guys were on the X, literally, because that's a military or CIA term.
Yes.
That you
Yes.
guys use in situations that you were in that you had to get out of.
Yes. So, get off the X, as you mentioned, is a term we use how to survive an ambush. So the X is the site of the attack. And if you are ambushed, your best chance of survival is to move, to fight the freeze response, which is very normal in human beings. And to get off the X, it requires extra energy and effort, but that's what you've got to do. And they even say, like, if your tires are blown out and your engine compartments, RPG is headed, it won't drive anymore, your best option is to stay in the vehicle if it's operable. But if suddenly you can't go anywhere, you got to get out of that vehicle and run.
And that was like the lead-off story with you two being chased by the bad guys,
That
or
was
what
fun.
you think was the bad guys.
That was so fun.
Tell the story real
Yes,
quick.
no. So,
tell the story.
we had to, the place that our first tour was 2 years, and it was such a dangerous place that every time we left our home, which was on a compound, we had guards on the inside and the outside of our compound, our little home. And then every time we left work, we had to be looking actively for hostile surveillance. We didn't want to become a target of a terrorist attack, or be kidnapped or carjacked, which was happening. And so we're driving back from work one day, and Joseph is just always constantly looking in the rearview mirrors, and he goes, I think we've got someone with us, which means, someone's right on our tail driving with us. And so he goes, I'm gonna just speed up a little bit, because most of the people driving in that city were really slow drivers. So if you want to ferret out,
They're like me.
Did they stop at green lights?
Yes, I just
yeah, I mean,
Trey would fit in.
there were people in that country who didn't even know what the lights and
Sounds
the
like
colors.
Florida.
Yeah,
What do those lights mean?
I don't know what that red means.
Sorry.
But so anyway, Joseph, put on the gas, and he stepped on the gas and flew through the streets. And eventually what happened was this car kept with us, and he sped up, and Joseph was like, oh my God, he's definitely on us. And so Joseph is weaving in and out of traffic, and even weaving in and out of red lights, till the point was a red light in front of us, cars are stopped, there's no weaving in and out. He has to slam on the brakes, and this car is literally kissing our bumper, so he slams into the back of us. And then it was like one of those Tom Cruise movies where the cars are spinning around each other.
slow motion too,
Like
right?
Slow motion. Right. And you're looking at him through the windshield, and you're like, what is happening right now? And then we end up both in the middle of the intersection. He's facing us, but we're maybe like 50 feet away. And then like hundreds of local men thronged our cars. And then whatever was going to happen didn't happen.
Oh, wow.
But so the government, which always blamed the Westerner, actually for once said it's not your fault, which was crazy. And then we kept pressing, like, well, who was he and what was he doing? It finally came out that he was the son of a senior government official. No further information.
Okay,
Sketchy.
just leave you hanging.
So don't know what he was. Maybe he was just being a jerk. Like maybe he's just being an aggressive driver, or maybe he was up to something else.
Sure.
We'll never know.
That's divine intervention.
Yeah.
I can't top stories like that.
Well, that's the cool thing about this book, because it has practical applications for how you can, improve your life and get out of situations, but there's stories throughout of things that people overcame.
Crazy stories.
Yeah, so it's like part novel, part self-help,
Yes.
motivational book. So it's really cool. It's a great combo.
So I would run into people and I would say, my gosh, that is the most fascinating story that I've ever heard. Somebody's got to tell that story. And then I ended up doing it.
There you go.
Like, so my friend Lisa, she was hit by a drunk driver at the age of 22 years old. She died technically and then somehow came back to life, and she had profound amnesia as a result. She landed on the X by circumstances completely out of her control. Her amnesia was so profound that not only did she not know who she was and never regain that memory, but didn't even know basic things about like life in the world.
Really?
So when the doctor was asking her, she didn't know what her name was. She didn't know these people were her parents. She didn't know how this 1-year-old came into being her son, like had no idea. Who's the president? And she said, what's a president?
Wow.
And so Lisa is on like one of the worst X's of life. You got to rebuild from zero. And if ever anyone had a reason to be upset and to like, blame the drunk driver on, she just never did. And she got off that X and she got off that X and she got off that X. Like, what an inspiration.
Wow.
She learned how to walk, talk, take care of herself. Like, you'd see her on the street today, you wouldn't know what Lisa's been through. Or her body is a complete mess, but she keeps going.
Because I'm when you said about a 1-year-old, I mean, as a mother, having you have that bond and that love, and it's like, did she lose that too? I mean, she had to relearn that.
She gained it all back.
Wow.
She just put her head to, this has to be restored. She fell in love with the Lord again.
Oh, good.
Second time. Her parents just loved her back, and her sister and her everybody just loved on her. And she got to know everybody from scratch, including her own child.
It's crazy.
Imagine, all the way to my friend Glenn, who just passed away this year, who was, again, thrown onto the X by circumstances completely outside his control. He was doing business in Kuwait when overnight Saddam Hussein and his troops rolled in, took over Kuwait. He and like 90 other unfortunate people, non-Kuwaitis, were taken as human shields to Iraq for like 4 months. And if you guys remember, we thought they were all going to die.
Yeah.
So he thought they lived every day thinking it might be their last.
Wow.
And they were shuffled around Iraq as human shields for nuclear sites and all kinds of strategic sites in Iraq. And he just said, I have no control over anything in my life right now except for my brain, and I am going to keep my brain going.
Yeah.
So he created games and he drew pictures and they caught rats and they planted little weeds, like whatever it took to keep moving forward. And he said other people in the group just fell apart. They couldn't get off the X. They wouldn't get off the X. They got sick all the time. They isolated themselves on their little cots. And he just like, it's a choice. It's a choice.
Was he a believer back then?
I don't know. But he had been in the military. He had been on a submarine, so he kind of knew how to survive in difficult, to make the best of difficult circumstances.
Well, one of your chapters, you talk about the in-betweens, and you said there was a study where they showed people who knew how long something was going to take helped them deal with the stress better. But these people had no idea how long they were going to be there, so it was indefinite. So, I mean, how hard would that be to deal with that unknown?
I think that's the hardest thing in life is we never know how long our circumstance is going to last, the things that happen to you that you're not in control of. If you knew, okay, this is going to last for 4 years, then that certainty helps you to get through it. But it's the not knowing that kills a soul,
Yeah, I bet.
right? So that's the hardest time to get through those moments when you just don't know. For Glenn, it was like 4 or 5 months. They didn't know. They thought death was around.
You woke up every morning wondering if you're going to see the light later. Yeah.
So how do you keep yourself moving forward with that uncertainty? Yeah.
I often speak about, and we use the analogy all the time. Momentum is a huge thing for us. and just to get the wheels turning. And there's so many things that keep us from going there. And you talk about it in part 2 of the book, where you talk about you're intimidated. You're talking about you're uncertain. You're talking about I've got fear. I can't remember what the other one was, or something happened to me to keep me from going. I experienced this last fall with a couple of things. We were so busy with the ministry. One or two things didn't go quite the way I wanted, and it totally deflated me, where I was like, should I even try to do that again? And I sat there for weeks just stuck on that X. That was my X. And finally, around Christmas time, I just made a phone call to someone just that's in the Christian entertainment industry. And that call was amazing. I was hoping you'd give us, and all of a sudden I felt like my momentum's starting back up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like you writing a book. Momentum is everything about writing a book, probably. Or writing a book is about momentum. Is you get it rolling, and
it's literally about the imperfect start.
Right.
Be willing to take the step, even if it's the wrong step.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's okay. We have this idea in our heads, like, I got to figure out that next perfect point on my path. Like, where am I going and what am I going to do? It's got to be perfect. And then we don't do anything. And, you don't write a book by waiting for the next perfect, to write the next perfect paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a book as an example, you're told you just throw up on the page. That's how you start. And you do it every single day, right? And so those imperfect starts is the momentum you need to get unstuck.
Right.
It's so profound, and it's so simple at the same time. Like something, and I always say this, like, I had a workout. It wasn't the best workout I've ever had. And my husband's like, yeah, but good job for you. And I'm like, something is better than nothing. And like,
Yeah.
Let me know about the trade craft section of the book.
Yes.
I started into that. Do we all know what our mission is?
I mean, some people know early on what their mission is, and other people like me takes a while to figure that out.
I'm that guy too. I didn't know what my mission was for years and years and years, and like you were saying earlier, it might take us to be 40 or 50 years old before it finally starts to click. But if someone doesn't have this clear direction on a mission, what words of encouragement do we give them?
Yeah, so the tradecraft is that you keep throwing yourself out there in the world, and this is good if you're 20 and you just graduated college, or you're 60 and you're just retired and you don't know what's next after retirement. You're throwing yourself out there in the world. Like, think of yourself as a C.I.A. agent. Like you're mining opportunities. You're trying different things, and you're seeing what sticks or what am I interested in. And there are things, especially in your 20s, when you don't know yourself, and you're like, oh, I suck at that. So you know what? That's probably not my life's calling.
Right.
But you can't know it unless you try it. Right. So it's like being an explorer of your own life. And then once a door opens and you enjoy it, then go further down that road. And so I think, finding out your calling, you're praying, you're asking God very specifically, because he wants you to know, like, please lead my steps. Please help me to be open and flexible. Please help me to notice the right things at the right time, or interact with the right person who's going to say, hey, have you ever considered A, B, and C? So it's like being an intel officer where you're mining the world for opportunities, and then you're asking questions of all the people you're running into every day. And you keep doing that until you figure it out.
And God puts people in our paths. I always tell people that are looking, it's about networking, who you know and things like that, relationships that you build. But God will put people in your path that will lead you to his ultimate will. And I truly believe that. It's evident in my life and has happened multiple times. Has that happened for you during your process?
Yeah. So like when God called me to write the book, I was like, and I don't know how. So you're going to have to help me out in here. And he actually was like, of course I will. He's like, yes, I will put the right people in your path at the right time to get you where you need to go. And it was never quick. It was always, it took longer than I thought it should. But my sister ended up writing a book first. So she's like, oh, I can tell you how to do that. And then I can tell you how to get an agent. And then, I couldn't get an agent. And then a year later, I met someone who said, I'm going to help you get an agent. God threw those people
Fantastic.
right in front of me exactly when I needed them. So you don't have to know the right people, right? It's not on you.
Yeah.
If you're open to it, God will send them your way.
But he expects you to step out, Michelle.
Yes.
There's a saying, I don't know who says it, you can't move a parked car. God can't move a parked car.
No.
He could, but anyway.
You can't steer a parked car.
Yeah,
That's the
right?
thing. You can't steer it 'cause it's still.
That's a good point. So
There needs to be, you need to be trying.
Exactly.
Like, you need to be
Oh, and that-
knocking on those doors and asking questions.
That's how the momentum piece starts building up.
And so what I do in the book is I say, not only am I going to give you a bunch of stories that are going to super inspire you, like crazy inspire you, but then I'm also going to give you the tools to know how to do that yourself, right? These are some ideas, some tradecraft that you can use to explore your world to become all that you're meant to be.
You have a interesting part about comparisons, like the two sides of comparing yourself to others. Talk about that, because I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We live in a world of constant comparison, right?
Especially with social media,
Constant.
right? You see people doing stuff, and you're like, "Well, I didn't do that," or "I'm not. I don't look like that."
It's terrible. It's and we can see how that's affecting these younger generations, in particular. So the comparison that says I'm not good enough is very destructive, right? However, the flip side of that is there's a comparison where you say, "Oh, well, I'm kind of like Michelle. I have fear, but she did it. So, if I'm so much like Michelle, then I can do it too." So it's the positive comparison. So my friend who was at Georgetown with me got into the C.I.A. first. And we were very, very similar. And I remember saying to her, "Do you think I'm capable of this job? Because you're in it now, right? I'm still in Georgetown." And she's like, "Oh yeah, you can totally do this." And that was salve to my soul. I was like, "Oh, okay, she thinks I can do it." So that's the positive comparison. We need more of those in our lives, right? If you're not surrounding yourself with people who are feeding positivity into you and encouraging you on your path, you're not hanging out with the right people.
by surrounding myself with, since I've been back practicing my faith and surrounding myself with Trey and Brad and the guys in Impact and the guys at Cav, and it's like that there's no more garbage because I'm surrounding myself with people that are like-minded, same goal, and are very successful in what they do.
Yeah.
It's so important. And also you teach each other like, hey, have you tried this or have you considered that? So you're actually like seeding ideas into each other, which is so helpful. I mean, I get that from my friends all the time, you guys. It means a lot. But, I think so often we take our life for granted. We don't think of our lives as an operation. We kind of just like lay back and let things happen. So for your listeners, it's like, are you stuck? Who are you stuck with? Are you hanging out with the right people? Are you happy? Are you not happy? Like it's taking stock of where you are and figuring out even not specifically where you want to be, but even just generally, like what direction you want to move in. Start there,
And it's not about using people. It's about gaining knowledge from people that have been through the same experiences or worse that you have.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be a producer, not a consumer. And I try to keep that mentality to do something. And I go back to the scripture a lot, and I really need to go deep further into it. And that is, Jesus said, "Greater things than I will you do." And I look at that, go, wow,
Really?
really?
I know.
Not me. Yeah.
And the scripture says that there are not enough books that contain all the things that Jesus did. We're only getting a small fraction of what he did. And I think that's partly probably the title of your book, Greater Things. Get off the X.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm trying to kind of bust through with this book, one of the underlying themes is that it's not about self-actualization, which is what social media and
That's what
society
the
is trying
world
to
wants
tell
you to
us.
do.
It's all about you and how you feel and being the best of yourself. Like, okay, so the flip side of that, first of all, that's the quickest way to anxiety. Yeah, if you're drowning in anxiety, it's because you're thinking about yourself too much. And they say that, like psychologists, psychotherapists say, the more you think about yourself, the worse you feel.
Wow.
So with that in mind, if I'm telling you to get off the X, it's not it's for you, but here's the rub. It's actually for someone else. So it's about how you serve others at the end of the day. It's not about the altar of self and how can I be amazing. It's how can I be amazing for someone else. It's a whole mind shift, because my ultimate examples in my life and in this book, well, besides Jesus, obviously, is Lillian Trasher.
I got the book. It's called Lady on a Donkey.
Lillian Trasher.
And I just started it.
And George and C.I.A. Assad, my in-laws.
Yes. Talk to us.
So I guess I won't go into too many details because the book has them all in there.
We want you to read the book.
But I want people to explore this amazing story on their own. But essentially, these individuals got off exes that were pretty profound.
Yes.
And I would say, my in-laws grew up in an orphanage, in a very, a difficult part of Egypt where there was a lot of extremism and difficulties, and it's hard to be a Christian, and there's significant persecution. Yeah. And you're told that if you don't have a family, there's something wrong with you. Like it's your fault that your parents died. Like it's like one of the worst things in the world to be. And yet my in-laws accepted the call of Christ in their lives. My father-in-law was called to preach the gospel at the age of 9. And he said yes. And yes, with no conditions. And they both grew up in the orphanage. They got married. And then years later, after being missionaries in Lebanon and fleeing during the war, the civil war in Lebanon, were asked to take the reins of the orphanage that they grew up in. And they spent, nearly 35 years serving thousands of children. And so they're like my ultimate shining example of what it means to really fulfill your life's calling, because it was never about themselves. It was about doing the best they could to get off their own exes. So my father-in-law, who's in Upper Egypt, where, we all didn't have the internet back then, but he thought education was so important. He knew how important education was. He educated himself. He got a PhD.
Wow.
And he used that PhD to teach others. Wow. Not because I just want to have a PhD and it sounds really cool. It's because I need to help other people, and he did that. And my mother-in-law, oh my gosh, she had a PhD in how to run an orphanage with thousands of children in it and make sure they're all well-fed and well-dressed. And
it's got to be exhausting.
And Christ-centered.
Absolutely.
That's what's crazy in that area.
100 years of this orphanage in existence because of some really faithful people who said, I will get off the X of my comfort zone because God has called me to, and it's going to be really hard. But as a result, tens of thousands of people's lives were changed.
Well, and this is a part of the world that's hostile towards Christianity. So this wasn't like doing it here in America.
No,
so I'm
where everybody's
sure.
like, oh, good for you.
Right.
Especially back then.
Oh, yeah.
It was all, Norman Rockwell in America.
But the ripple effect of those kids who've the thousands of orphans who've gone through there. I mean, there's stories that we hear all the time from you guys. Joseph meeting somebody last year in another country who was from the orphanage. I mean, he's a lawyer. I mean, it's an incredible story.
Yeah, that was so crazy. Yeah, like example. So Joseph's having lunch with these lawyers of this really big law firm in London, and eventually comes out that this man's from Egypt. And Joseph's like, "Well, where are you from in Egypt?" And he's like, "Oh, you won't know."
No
Joseph's
way.
like, "Well, try me." And he's like, "Well, I'm from Upper Egypt." And Joseph's like, "Well, I am too." And he's like, "Where in Upper Egypt?" And he's like, "You'll never know." And then he's like, and then it turns out his parents grew up in the orphanage.
Oh my goodness.
And Joseph's like, let me tell you my connection to the orphanage. And then, of course, I'm exploding right now. I can't believe this. This is amazing. So here he is, a high-powered lawyer now. Because other people got off their exes and to serve the Lord.
Well, and this was a throwaway child, an orphan in any part of the world, really.
Yeah,
it's just probably like, toss that kid on the pile. He's not going to ever do anything. And you've got many stories like that of people that are doctors and lawyers and doing amazing things around the world. It's
raising their own families, raising their kids.
You had this one piece about the detonations. That's kind of cracked up. The controlled how you have to blow some stuff up sometimes,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as we make this walk and throughout the pages of this book, your faith just comes out in some of the quotes you make and, referencing some Bible scripture and things. How important is just knowing who you are to getting off the X's in your life? And from a spiritual perspective.
Well, spiritually, you're always going to encounter obstacles, right? There's no easy way off the X. But if you have faith that, okay, God has released us from slavery in Egypt, it's going to take a lot to get to the promised land because we got to cross this big old desert called the Sinai Peninsula.
Right.
You have to have the faith to wait for the promised land to come into view, right? So there's going to be obstacles, i.e. there's not going to be a lot of water sources in the desert. Food sources are very, light. So can you trust God with that desert?
Right.
Can you trust that he's going to give you the manna every day?
Right.
Because that's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
It is not for the weak, by the way.
No.
You got to be strong.
Yeah.
I love how people think that Christians are weak. I'm like, you have no idea the strength required when you are called to live a life for Christ.
Yes.
It is, you do have to get through that desert. And by the way, I will show you how to get through the desert because I'm going to put a cloud behind you and a fire in front of you, and the angels are going to be right there. And we're going to say, move today. Or the next day, don't move today. We're going to be so specific about that. And we're going to give you the manna you need. And yet, those people fell apart so often, but that's just a reflection of humanity, right? It's hard for us humans to do that because we're like, this desert's really hot. By the way, I have been there and I can attest to the fact that it is really hot.
It is really hot.
And it's really isolating and it's really bereft of life. You gotta keep pushing through it. So the calling is you gotta keep your eyes on me because none of this is going to be easy.
Right.
We are not called to easy.
True.
We are called to hard.
As men, we try to fix things, and being totally reliant on Christ is tough because we have that inner sense of I've got to do this, I've got to do this. But when we let that get in the way, Jesus, the Lord, just says, wait, my plan is better. Just listen, wait, rest, and I'll show you the way.
Yeah, it's powerful. So for me, what was the best example of that in my career was that I couldn't get a job. My gosh, everyone else was getting jobs, as you alluded to earlier. And what I later realized, because I didn't lose my faith in God, I told him, this is hard. This hurts, but I didn't blame him. I said, I still trust you. I don't understand it. At the end of the day, God was like, I was preserving you for this very unique path I have for you that you don't even know exists. So I want you to get into the C.I.A. I can't tell you that now. Just got to wait a little bit. He's like, I got to block all these other doors because if you start a career over here, you're not going to get to the C.I.A. and that's where I need you. It's saying, God, I don't understand what you're doing, and I'm fundamentally okay with that. I'm just going to keep walking until you show me what's next.
Yeah.
Right. You were talking about having the focus on him when life stinks. And it just reminds me of 2 Corinthians. It was Paul on the X when he was screaming at God, take this thorn out, take this thorn out. And then Jesus' words were, he didn't say, okay, come over here, I'm going to take the thorn out. He said, focus on me. My grace is sufficient for you. And I take that to heart so much because we react so often to what someone says about us or a situation that happens to us. We base everything on feelings, emotions, and happiness. And the truth isn't about those three things. The truth is about Jesus, period. Focus on him moving forward. I was in a discussion the other day. One of my favorite chapters in the Bible, Romans 8. The first verse, this guy quotes it all the time. Say it.
Which one?
There is now
no condemnation for those.
There's no condemnation in Christ, right? And then the next 4 or 5 verses talks about the flesh and how we need to walk and be careful and all these things. And then it goes back into you are no longer a part of the flesh. And then it gets into the Holy Spirit, same Spirit that lives inside of you is the one that raised Christ from the dead, right? It's crazy how the discussion immediately went from there's no condemnation, you're not part of it, the Holy Spirit lives in you, but as people, we tend to focus on the problems. And that middle section is focusing on the flesh. We need to be aware of what's going on in our lives and aware to overcome it. But the focus wasn't on, I'm not condemned, that's who I used to be, and I have the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead in me. The focus wasn't on that, it was on the problems.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's my X. That's when I get on the X, is when I focus. It's not just top of mind, it is how can I control to stay out of that.
You're the only one in the world, Trey.
I know. Somebody.
No one else is like that.
No.
Just so you know.
Okay. Shoot.
As humans, we've got that covered. We never worry about the problems.
And I'm going to turn this around, give you the last little thing. Person that's intrigued by the title, Get Off the X. An overarching theme from you as we close out.
To not settle in your life for less than you're called to be, and to develop the muscle of perseverance so that you can follow that calling.
Nice. Both of you and your hubby, just great friends. We love you dearly. We're so excited about the book. There is a book signing coming up.
Yes.
In our area, February 22nd. Is there another one before that?
Yes, February 5th for the ladies of Brevard County.
We're not invited.
Oh, well.
So February 5th, where is that going to be?
Lansing Island Clubhouse.
Lansing Island Clubhouse.
Contact me if you want access.
We can contact Michelle. How do we contact you?
I'll give you an email that you
Okay.
can post.
Well, maybe we can put it in the description of that. And then on February 22nd, our friends at Urban Prime are going to host a book signing for you in Viera.
Yes.
And I'm definitely planning on being in that one because your husband is going to be speaking that morning at our men's breakfast.
Yes.
Giving us some updates from his experiences, and it's called Men on a Mission. And just from a servant's heart that you two have, he's going to share a little bit about what's life like living as a persecuted Christian in another country and how to overcome, and then the need to serve in other countries, the people that might not believe. So that's going to be really big. So that's February 22nd. That's our next big thing. February 5th, hit the Lansing Island. Get Off the X. And I know you might be going to a town near you too, somewhere else. What else is going on later this year?
I'm going to the Mob Museum in Las Vegas.
Cool.
Because I've really reached a new level.
Oh my gosh.
For a podcast this week, yeah.
Nice.
You going out there this week?
That's right.
You're the second
Mob
person.
Museum. I
Awesome.
love it.
You're the second person that has come into my life in the past 2 months that have spoken at the Mob Museum.
Really?
The first one was actually a mob guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're trying to get him in here, and he wrote a book, and not about getting off the X, because he was definitely stuck in the X where he was in New York. But so that'll be great. Yeah, so we can check all that out. Look in the description right below, and you can get the contact information of how to get a hold of Michele. Get Off the X. C.I.A. Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your Life's Mission. You're just a total inspiration, my friend.
Thank you.
We really, really appreciate it. So check it out. You can get it on Amazon.
Wherever you buy books.
Wherever you buy books. If you go to Amazon, though, and you order the book, they give you an opportunity to write a review. And that's
reviews.
We need reviews. That's very big. So please order the book off Amazon. Or you can, I got it on Audible, and I've been listening to you in my car as well. I sent y'all a picture of that the other day, and your husband made a weird comment to me. But you can get it there, and you can listen to Michele tell her story as well. So check us out, impactministries.org. If you're watching us on YouTube, just hit like, share it with a friend. If you're checking us out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, give us another like, share us with someone else. Let's just spread the word that we're trying to get across, that it's deeper than you ever know, and that grace is the most powerful gift God ever gave us. And it's only through that we're able to meet amazing people like Michele, sometimes Brad,
Definitely not me.
definitely not you,
Michael.
But with that said, we sure do appreciate you guys tuning in. Our new set's looking amazing, Brad. Thank you.
It's coming along.
It's coming along. We're
Good.
just not black curtains behind us anymore.
Yep.
So, and stay tuned. February 22nd is the men's breakfast at Church of Viera, and I'm hoping to have an announcement by the next time we get together about our next Grace experience at the King Center. So, can't let the cat out of the bag yet, but it's looking pretty favorable. We're going to have another get together later this spring. So, love you. We'll catch you on the flip side. I'm Trey.
I'm Michael.
I'm Brad.
I'm Michelle.
And it's Michelle. And what are we? We're the Cousin Christians.
Christian.
Get out.
You went too fast again.
I know. Sometimes it's imperfect.
Well, Michelle, you've been on some pretty lofty shows with Megyn Kelly and Michael Franchise and some of these different people. How does it feel now to be on the Cousin Christians?
I mean,
Can you
this
describe?
is the ultimate. Yeah, of course.
There's a high
Nothing
bar.
like this, but
That's hilarious.
We have 1/1 millionth of their following.
Yeah, right.
But, there'll be 20 people with us.